Welcome to Refirement Life, the podcast for anyone navigating life transitions or planning to make life transitions to ensure your next years are your best years. Listen in for insightful, generous, and sometimes humorous conversation. It's time to get fired up with Christiane Schroeter and Muge Wood, your hosts for this latest episode of Refirement Life.
Hello, and welcome to Refirement Life. We are here today with Dr. Christiane Schroeter, and Christiane is so well accomplished. This is going to be such a treat for all of you today. First, let's just share a little bit about her background. Dr. Schroeter is a TEDx speaker and leadership strategist. She is the creator of the Petite Practice. Learning so much from her background. She has her PhD in health economics. She is currently a professor at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and she has written 3 books, also has a podcast herself, the Happy Healthy Hustle podcast. And wow, so you are one busy lady, always learning and always sharing your wisdom. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm excited to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. And of course, I want to add one important thing, audience, that was not in my bio, that I'm a mom. And a lot of these things that I do are really also inspiring my daughters, maybe to start their own business and becoming leaders. But we'll talk more about that as I share my background. So
that's fantastic.
It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, one of the most important roles on the planet. I also have 2 kids, and yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot that what you're doing, but of course, when you are excited and passionate about what you are doing, that is a great way to role model your kids. So let's get right into your origin story. So being a professor, you've taught over 10,000 professionals. And just tell us a little bit more about that journey. How did that come about, and what eventually led you to create the Petite Practice framework?
That's a really great question. So we just did the math before we started the recording here. And I realized that next year, I am celebrating my 20th year here at Cal Poly in California. And before that, I taught actually a couple of years in the south of the United States. And one day I sat down and did the math. I was at, how many people's life have I touched? Because it seems like I see a lot of the students, and sometimes their siblings. And I think eventually it's going to come to the point where they're going to send their children to me. So I was like, well, why don't I figure this out? And that's really when I came to that number of 10,000, which seems incredible. But there are a lot of students that I really see in the classroom. Because I have had this longevity of teaching, I've also noticed how students have been changing. Not just in terms of, trends or certain aspects of society, but it really is in terms of how they learn and how they actually learn better, right? So I always say it's great when you are an educator because it keeps you young.
Yeah, for
My
sure.
students stay about the same age, but, I grow older. And I look at it as an opportunity to learn from them. So I really soak up their behavior like a sponge, just as I hope they soak up my teaching as a sponge. So what I noticed was like the same strategy that I maybe used 15 years ago, showing up with a bunch of slides, going through like some, course idea that I had for that day, like today I'm going to teach about this, and I'm walking out and I've taught that. It doesn't really work for 2 reasons. Not everybody really enjoys looking at slides, and that's actually including me now. Like, we're pretty tired of the whole slide clicking situation. And secondly, we really enjoy learning in smaller pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really introducing now that Petite Practice. Nobody wants to sit there and listen for a lecture for an hour and a half. It just sounds like pure, like a waterfall of wisdom. And we can only grab like little droplets of that. So think of these droplets as like your little nuggets that you take away from this 1.5 hour lecture. So why not just structure the lecture as the droplets, and you use your own brain, your critical thinking, and do the rest and create your own waterfall of wisdom. So that's really how I came about. I need to involve the students much more in getting from point A to point B in the learning. And I give them different modalities how to get there. So instead of just showing them slides, how about we also write something? Because not everybody is a visual learner. Some people learn better when they actually interact with the material. Some people like to listen to it. So I also share podcast episodes with my students. And then, of course, I have them get up to their feet and put big Post-it notes on the wall and write things out and present it. So they are verbalizing the knowledge themselves and explaining to the rest of the class what they just took away. So that's really how my classroom changed. It became much more of a room of experience. And the time just goes by fast because now we have so many different petite little steps, and I call them practice, of how we learn the material, that it's not just like me pushing material down, but it is rather like everybody grabs different nuggets and we throw it to each other like a ball and we keep interacting with it. And it's much more of like a neuroplasticity in your brain instead of just saying, I'm only tapping into that side of your brain right there. That's how Petite Practice was born.
Oh, that's wonderful. It sounds like I would imagine your classes are pretty popular because they aren't just the same old thing where you are locked in a room for an hour and 15 minutes trying to keep up with the notes and writing. But what you just described also, I know just from understanding how people learn with different pathways of learning, when you read, when you write, when you repeat, when you talk, it's more likely to actually stay with you, the information that you're absorbing. So that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, and I even have an online community that I have built that I call the Leadership Lab. So all students are invited to join the online community. It is a completely private community just for my students. And they interact with each other. And that means that if they don't want to raise their hand in the classroom and share in front of all of the other students what they just took away, or maybe when they are in the class, they might not have thought about it, but when they walked away from the class, that thought came to them. So they have 24/7 the opportunity to join the Leadership Lab, interact with each other, really share thoughts, small wins. I call them weekly wins. Maybe even goals that they have for the next month. And it is really humbling to read that when I look back. The reviews that I get in my classroom, she made me a better human. I learned marketing, I learned sales, but I also feel like I learned how to interact with society. And that's I think really the best thing, right? You don't want to just say, check mark, they know how to create a sales plan, check mark. We know how to do a marketing sales strategy. It is really just about how can we become the best version of ourselves? And I call it your superpower. How can you really tap into what you're meant to be and then share that with the world?
Wow. And as I watch the younger generations, the individuals that stand out are the people who can connect, have a conversation, learn in different modalities. So the fact that you're helping to accelerate that just bodes so well for society as a whole, too. You've got this on-ramp of people coming out of your classes who are more prepared for everyday life. And I imagine more confident because they're trying some things on, right? And then using them inside and outside of the classroom.
Yeah, I always say, it's really about confidence. And it's not about speaking louder or speaking more or using certain trendy keywords. It's really about confidence. And that is really what I'm encouraging in my class. I'm giving you the space and the time and the tools to get to that point. And some people grab it in the first week and some people grab it in the fourth week. Mm-hmm. But it is individually the learning path that they take, which is why it's called Leadership Lab and why it's called a Petite Practice. It's just trying on different modalities and see where you fit in and then really honing that ability and making it shine.
Fantastic. Let's talk about the small steps that people need to take. And I think we often underestimate that, like what is actually happening neurologically when we're taking small steps towards something and gaining skills. So I don't know if you have an example of a student or just, sort of some top of mind thoughts on why the Petite Practice really works.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I call myself a leadership strategist because I will help you go from your, big goal to taking the daily action. And what's really important is the daily action can become pretty tricky. There's a lot of friction in life that sometimes makes the daily action nearly impossible to start just because there's all this other life falling down on you, right? Like sometimes daily actions are easy. You're like, okay, today I'm going to do this. And on some days you're like, I have no idea how I'm going to get all this done. Mm-hmm. And that's when I say, if you make the action small enough, you can accomplish it consistently on a daily basis because you didn't put a huge burden on your calendar. And by small enough, I mean, it's usually your time commitment. So we only have 24 hours in the day. And that's really what we all have. Mm-hmm. Nobody has more time than anybody else. So if you have a big goal, let's break down this big goal into these small, manageable, petite practice steps.
Yes.
And when I meet my students in the classroom, I usually say, all right, so your goals might be health, your goals might be wellness, it might be, reading more, working out more, maybe eating healthier, spending more time with friends and more family. But the really tricky thing is, and that's what I help you with, how do you get there? Mm-hmm. So let's maybe break it down. And there was a student I just talked to, and I said, well, student said, I don't spend enough time outside. And here we are in California. That's like, it's kind of
a crime. That's a crime.
It's like, okay. So, and don't judge, right? Like, I mean, it's like, it's cool. I mean, I get it. You're busy. And the main thing is like, it's small step. We have to get started. And it's sometimes just an interruption in your pattern. You lead your way a certain way. So how can you make that little disruption to actually getting outside? So I said, all right. First step is maybe you need to get some shoes that allow you to walk around outside. Mm-hmm. And flip-flops might be all right at the beginning, but if you really want to do like a daily walk or something outside, maybe you got to grab some sneakers. So your first petite practice would be maybe figuring out, A, on your calendar, when is a good time to do that you could take this little walk, and B, you got to put your shoes by the door. So when you walk past the door, you have this visual reminder, oh my gosh, shoes, I wanted to go outside, right? Because otherwise the day passes and you're like, oh, it's true, I didn't go outside today. Nope. You have to make this as disruptive in your face as possible, like nearly tripping over the shoes when you walk through your apartment. So eventually like, all right, I'm going outside. The dog that shows up with the leash in the mouth, that's what you have to do for yourself.
Right.
And that is really like what helps. And sometimes I tell my students, and you might just go outside for a little bit, walk around, and then come right back. Awesome. And then maybe on the next day, you do a little bit longer. The next day, maybe a little loop. So it's not about like, let's run a marathon. That's not really what we're trying to do because not everybody enjoys that. And then again, why do you want to run a marathon? Just to do it? Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, some people really enjoy doing this, but if you just want to do more activity outside, we don't need to go all out and do the marathon. So that is really a great example of how you can create a habit by starting really, really small and create big impact over time.
Yeah. And how do you encourage the students to continue with these habits? Do you subscribe to the the notion that, you do something for 21 days and it becomes a sort of more ingrained habit, or
I hold
are
them
you just,
accountable. Yeah,
yeah.
I hold them accountable. So in my leadership lab, in my community, I have a board that's called Weekly Wins, and I check in. I said, so report back to us in the classroom or right here, how this is going. And then I asked him, I said, so how did that all go with your walking? Did you actually make it outside? And I think they feel comfortable enough to say, no, I didn't make it. Or they feel comfortable to say, I might need a little bit more help. Because I always give them the hall pass, I call it, the permission to say it didn't work. Or to permission to say, you know what, actually, I did it and I don't like walking outside at all. It's not my thing. Maybe I just enjoy sitting outside reading a book. That's great. Because I always say, don't look at a failure. In reality, fail just means it was your first attempt in learning, right?
I like that.
So if you want to walk outside and you're like, don't like it. I don't like the sunshine. I don't like whatever, the movement. I run into people. Some people just want to do something very, isolated, maybe just sitting in their backyard in a chair. Awesome. So your first attempt in learning was walking wasn't your thing. Your second attempt in learning, what I call sail, would be sitting in the backyard. So I always say, it's like trying on shoes. You're like, oh, that didn't really work. And let's try on these other ones. So I give them a permission to just report back to me. And then we'll just like troubleshoot. All right, that didn't work. And so, of course, we're talking a lot about wellness things because I teach entrepreneurship. I go with them through so many pivots in their businesses, which is why when I earlier mentioned the 10,000 professionals, I see them at my students, and then I see them after they graduate and they start their companies, and we stay in touch, and I see how they're growing from, say, small to medium-sized businesses, but I still stay connected with them, and I check in with them. I think that's really important.
That's fantastic. That is awesome. So, you mentioned confidence earlier, and you said that confidence, not hustle, is the foundation for effective leadership. And that challenges a lot of what people believe. So where does hustle break down? I mean, especially in America, the United States, it's such a hustle culture. What advice do you have for people to think a little bit differently on that topic?
I think that frequently we tend to wait until the very last moment to get something done, which is when we hustle and things become really sloppy. And because they're sloppy, we're not very confident about what we just created. We already feel this was not the best I could do, which is a really bad setup. It's like a lose-lose. We waited, we threw together something sloppy, and then we have a guilty feeling about throwing together something sloppy, right? So what I always say is the Petite Practice approach is not just there to improve your life or reach your big goals. It's also to meet a deadline. If you know that this thing is coming up, why not chip away at it consistently and not block a whole day, maybe the last day or the last night, and crank it out? Because creativity happens like in little spurts. And it also happens when you keep revisiting it. For me, frequently when I create something and I walk away, and I might take that walk outside, and then I come back and I look at it and I'm like, oh, this is really good. So what I could do also is that, and yes, I'm not going back and like revising the whole thing, because we all have been there, the never-ending revision board. We're not doing that. But sometimes fresh eyes on the next day or like a few hours later really help. And so I tell my students, the hustle culture usually doesn't really create the most health or happiness. You have to break down your hustle into these small steps to really feel the true joy and the true health you're really striving for, which is why it's called Happy, Healthy Hustle, my podcast, because my podcast is small little bites, 15 minutes, 10 minutes of an audio and, of course, a video content that helps you to become a better you.
Love it. That's great. So let's move on. Many of our listeners are people who are already have built very successful careers. They're thinking about what's life after this career. What's my third chapter going to look like? Thinking about reinvention. What are the most common patterns you see that keep people stuck in that confidence gap, especially when you're leaving in an identity and a business and for lack of a better word, like a really safe place to do something completely different?
I think the most common thing is that you had maybe an experience with something and maybe it wasn't even an amazing experience. And then you label yourself with that experience. Like, for instance, oh, I'm just not good with that. Or I am not a good interviewer, or I don't think I can compete with others because I don't think I have the skill set. So that is very common to where you kind of box yourself in those certain categories. And the other thing that I see is that we underestimate how much we actually have accomplished. So these two things nearly like go hand in hand. Like, especially for women, you sometimes don't even showcase yourself. And I call this, of course, visibility. We hear this term all the time. But I put myself a reminder on my calendar that every Sunday I look through the previous week and then I very intentional pick out some little things that I accomplished, some weekly wins, and I share them. And I share them with the goal of A, inspiring people that work with me currently, but also B, of letting others know you can do this too, right? So people that haven't even met me before might see that and they say like, oh, wow, she is. She's sharing something. I don't know this lady, but maybe I should share something too. So if you look back, you really build your accomplishments more into a motivation for the coming week. Especially if you want to switch careers. All of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, I actually have so much more under my belt than what I have thought, right? Whether that's your second career or your third career or whatever chapter of life you're accomplishing, you have to really do that self-reflection to get the push to go to that next chapter. Really like you're moving a house, right? You're kind of like thinking, all right, so what am I really looking for? What is it really that brings me joy? And in the past, all these amazing things I can accomplish, how can I decorate my new house with that so that somebody meets me, that they see that immediately? And I think what's really, really important is that you should nearly do like a little escape room strategy where you meet with people who know you really well and you sit down with them, and that could be in a coffee shop or something. And then you ask them, what do you think I'm really good at? What do you think I have not thought about that you see in me that would be a really amazing skill I should share in the future? And then you hear from others and that gives you motivation. But at the same time, it also might let these other people know, oh, I am looking for another job. And here I am kind of trying to revisit what I'm going to do in the future. And you will never think of the connections that you will make in that moment with these people. Because in reality, most jobs are really built because of somebody knew somebody. And you were just the right person at the right moment, right?
Very true. Very true.
So you need to be active for that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I have experienced that practice that you've mentioned of asking people like, how do you see me? And you do learn some things that are, that you do very differently that are received positively, that you think are just the way you do things, right? I think it's easy to take some of the things that you do well for granted because it's just core to who you are and not think that it's extra. The one thing I'd love to drill down on more, which is something new that I've heard from you, is this reflection and sharing what you've done weekly. So tell us a little bit about like how you share, where you share it, so that gives people some more context for how they would actually do that in their own situations.
Yeah, so I started doing this practice with a Google spreadsheet. And you could even set it up to where you have a form that you send weekly to yourself. So you basically just create a Google form and have your email set up to where it's weekly dropping into your inbox. And then the form, of course, automatically puts whatever you enter into the form into a Google sheet, right? And then I go in and my little categories are, for instance, I create a Google business update on my Google business profile. So my business, Dr. Christiane, Google business updates really create more of a push on the Google search to really bring me up to the top. I create a LinkedIn update, and I also have a LinkedIn newsletter. So I have a LinkedIn post, I have a LinkedIn newsletter, and then it comes the regular social media, of course, where Instagram and Facebook and TikTok are the ones where I go. And that's on top of my weekly scheduling, which is my podcast and my YouTube. But see, the way that I just described it to you, I could have said, oh, I'm like on all social media. The way that I described it to you is you could totally trickle those out, which is exactly what I do, following my Petite Practice approach. You could I do a Monday Google business update. You could do a LinkedIn on Tuesday. You could do your Instagram on Wednesday, your newsletter on Thursday. So you're becoming relevant, and top of mind awareness in marketing is really how you can enter that next chapter in your life, because people see you on different channels from different angles, and you're becoming more relevant without being this person that's just only using that one channel, and it's becoming a little bit like a one-trick pony. You want to be like versatile and show, look, I'm like here, and I'm also doing this and that. And for me, this actually creates also the moment to where I can see how people interact with the material and what material I will use then in my next week when I share my next weekly wins. Yeah. So it's quite beautiful because different people hang out on different channels.
Right.
And it allows me really to build my network without putting all my sources into that one channel.
Yeah, I think that's very effective, I would imagine, for a number of reasons. I mean, first, you're doing it weekly cadence, you're consolidating all your information, but sharing it and scaling it. And also just the pure practice of doing it makes you more aware of the things that are probably more relevant to share, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, it even comes down to the fact to when you introduce yourself, that you kind of want to nearly weave some of these things in. And I was also recently featured on Innovation Woman as the speaker of the month of April. And then people are like, oh my gosh, you were? I didn't even know you were a keynote speaker. And boom, there we go. There goes the discussion, right? So you nearly want to feel a little bit that you elevate people's perception of you by bringing up some of these things and making it more relevant for them to meet you. Because otherwise, you just introduce yourself with your job title. But I always say it's just a title. There's in reality really nothing behind it. So what do you really do in your job on a daily basis? And by weaving those weekly wins into a conversation, you're giving something more to latch onto where people can actually interact with them, and it brings a little bit more substance into your activity.
Yeah. I'd love to hear how you introduce yourself. So you're meeting someone at a cocktail party. What do you say that sort of sparks curiosity to them? Because you're across a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the cocktail party, but I usually use my first name with my title, Dr. Christiane, because that's really my brand, Dr. Christiane. And then I say I'm a leadership strategist, and I help leaders build confidence and small wins with small steps that create big impact. And I think that is really where leaders get stuck the most. Everybody can make plans, but really putting that behavioral science, where I have my PhD, together with my background in coaching and looking at that Venn diagram intersection, so that when you're maybe not motivated, not having the behavior to do this, to really pick up a strategy that really leads to wins, that's really where I see my my golden ticket, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think, to be honest with you, deep down, we are all like procrastinators, which is great because it's very energy efficient, right? So the trick is just to use that behavior of being a procrastinator and overcoming the stigma that you think, oh, I'm just lazy, I'm not getting anything done, and I don't know how to do this. And here's my worst. I hear it all the time. I am so confused. It's like, don't tell yourself these things.
Mm-hmm.
No, don't tell yourself you're confused because it's only going to make things worse, right?
Right. Words of energy, right?
Yes.
Just take, as you said, take a small step in the right direction, and they add up over time, right?
Yes.
To big progress.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So much to talk about with you. Let's focus in on maybe one or two petite practices that listeners could try this week, like something that's simple but powerful enough to shift their thinking, create some energy around taking a step.
Yeah, one thing that really helps, and we just talked about this in this previous question, is to kind of just reframe your thinking. And I just actually talked about this yesterday with a client, because we tend to have these thoughts in our head, these voices, right? And you could even label those voices in your head and give them like cute little names, whatever, feels like your mood would be. But I would really encourage you to reframe the thinking a little bit more positive so that the voices in your head start to sound like how you would talk to your best friend.
Yes.
That is a very good petite practice. Listen to yourself, and you can start saying it out loud, especially if you work from home and there's nobody else at home. It helps actually to sometimes say it out loud. So instead of saying like, oh, I will never get this done, or something like, of course this has to happen to me because I am always, the one that, messes things up, or something like that. The always, oh my gosh, that's like really one of those things. Start like listening to this and then just reframe it and say, okay, well, I guess it didn't work out this time, or, in general, like, oh, maybe that's just the way that I approach things. And maybe, others appreciate my perspective about this. So you need to start talking to yourself like like somebody would to your best friend, because I think that's really the trick, that we use words talking to ourselves. We would never talk to anybody else. And
Absolutely.
Once you change that, it will already create more confidence, because you're kind of boosting your own energy just with using different frames of words.
Right. No, that's great advice. That's great advice. I kind of myself have the opposite problem. Like, I have very positive all the time, like, I can do this. I will do this. I will do, and I do get a lot of things done. But I do know on the tennis court, it could be in a competitive match, it could be a little bit different for me. I sometimes have that negative self-talk and have to really completely turn it off, just to reset, right?
Yeah, and that's, maybe you asked about the two petite practices. The first was change how you talk to yourself. The second one, and this is actually perfect example with your tennis court example, or maybe the very positive thinking. And I used to be, like, you could say always like, yes, and I would love to help, and blah, 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 blah. This is like a very dangerous thing, especially for females. Somebody asks you, and like, of course I can help, and yes, I'm here, and I can be your I can support you because I know you're struggling. Let me help you. This is a very dangerous thing. I used to be there too, and I remember sitting like in a PTA meeting. So I left campus like a crazy woman, sitting in the car, driving to the PTA meeting, and I also work as a fitness instructor. And then from there to drive back to campus, teach my fitness class, come back home, make dinner, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden I was like, why am I doing this? Why did I say yes to all of this? So this is your second petite practice, positive self-talk. Secondly, let's start practicing the word no a little bit more. because you need to create boundaries. If you want to become the best version of yourself, you need time and energy, and you can only get this if you maybe look at your schedule and you really figure out something's got to go. Right. I always say to my clients, you can only add if you take something else off.
I say the same thing. I love that saying. Yeah. Yes.
It's like, yay, we can do more workouts and read more books and blah, 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 blah. But okay, so what are you going to get rid of? Nothing? Mm-hmm. Well, we have a problem, right? It's going to be, that is not going to happen. So you need to think, all right, so maybe the PTA meeting has to go. And that's what I did, right? I was like, I can't do this physically. I cannot be at all these places at the same time. It requires too much driving. I'm wasting so much time sitting in the car. And it was just, I felt the version of myself that showed up wasn't the best version. So I was like, okay, I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah, great interpersonal awareness.
Efficient. When I go down to the grocery store, I'm like, okay, the grocery store is over there. So I drive by the car wash and then I drive there. So I'm like combining, it's like nearly like, like in your brain, you're creating like a little most optimal route of errands.
You're a logistics expert.
You have to do it. As a mom, you have to do it because you're always juggling all these schedules. And in my life, maybe somebody else likes that word. In my life, there's no balance. Mm-hmm. I call it harmony. It's just like all jiving together, but there's no balance. Nothing is ever like, no, it's not like that. It's just like, okay, we just get it all done somehow.
Yeah. Be a realist on that, right? As we wind down, let's think about ways that our listeners can further engage with you. You dropped so much wisdom, and I imagine that there's a lot of folks who are inspired by your words, would like to do more. You have your website, which is Dr. Doctor Christiane, which is CHRISTIANE.com, and we'll put that in the show notes. Certainly people can go there and see your TED Talk, but are there other ways to engage with you?
Yeah, so anybody who purchases one of my books, they're all available on Amazon under my first and last name, has access to my online community, the Leadership Lab I mentioned. It's a private community, but it is really just anybody that gets my books can use the material in the book and use the online community to really enhance and expand their learning from the pages to really go along with the different learning styles we talked about. And then if you're just curious right now, you're like, oh, I just want to see this lady in action. You can go to YouTube and we put that link in the show notes to where my TEDx talk is, but also my podcast episodes land there every week. And then I also share shorts with like fun little moments, including some of my students, and show them what the classroom looks like, etc. And then, of course, one thing is, if you are curious about what we talked about, that superpower, I have a free quiz on my website, drchristiane.com, and then quiz, and you can take that and figure out where your strengths really are.
Okay. And that quiz is for people of all ages, correct?
Oh, yeah. And it is quite eye-opening. It will give you a little leadership score in terms of how aware are you about your superpower and what can you do to really tap more into it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for being so generous with your time. And I'm so encouraged that we have people like you and on the university, in the classrooms, teaching that next generation. I can only imagine we're, as a society, going to benefit from the connections you're making with these young people, soon to be, fantastic leaders in the world.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, we will sign off. Until next time, everyone.
Thank you for listening. Our hope is to spark a little joy, inspire, and educate our listeners in ways to live an even more meaningful life. If you have reactions to share from what you've heard, please visit our website, refirement.life, to leave a voice message. You may even be featured in a future episode. To keep in touch, subscribe to our podcast, Refirement Life, using the podcast player of your choice. Always remember, you are never too old to set a new goal or to dream a new dream. Thanks again for joining us on this episode. Until next time.